Good afternoon. I now call the public meeting of the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment to order. My name is Katrina Knockleby, and I am the MLA for Great Slave, and today I am the acting chair of this committee. Today, the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment is holding a public review of Bill 78, Waste Reduction and Resource Recovery Act. Please note this meeting is being live streamed on the Assembly's media channels. I will now ask members to introduce themselves for the record, starting with the member in the room.
Kevin O'Reilly, Frame Lake.
Thank you, and if I could have members that are joining us virtually introduce themselves. Thank you.
Alan Johnson, MLA for Yellowknife North.
Jackie Jacobson, MLA, Nunavut.
Thank you, members. I will also introduce our staff in the room. To my left, I have Pascal Erasmus, Committee Advisor. To my right, Katie Weaver, Committee Clerk. And we also have today joining us Kate Cavello, who is actually our Hansard editor, but is working on a manual right now for new MLAs on which committee or how committees operate. So she's going to observe today. We also have our law clerk, Toby Kruger, in the room. Thank you so much. I will now ask the Honourable Shane Thompson, Minister of Environment and Climate Change, to provide some opening remarks and introduce his staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to discuss Bill 78, the Waste Reduction and Resource Recovery Act. I'm here today with Julian Canagan, Assistant Deputy Minister of Environment Management, Monitoring and Climate Change, David Hall, Acting Manager of Waste Reduction and Management, Dennis McCurry, Director of Policy, Legislation, and Evaluation and Communication, Melissa Bird, Manager of Legislation and Legal Affairs, Laura Jeffries, Legislative Counsel for the Department of Justice, and Jeff Ray, Minister Special Advisor. I'd like to thank the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment for this review of this bill. Based on the feedback from the committee, the department and law clerk worked on a number of motions that may be introduced today. I believe the bill will be improved as a result of this work. Bill 78 represents a significant step towards modernizing the Waste Reduction and Recovery Act. It will allow the GNWT to use the most current tools to effectively manage waste production and recycling in NWT and ensure an aligned approach across various sectors and jurisdictions. New tools include an expanded scope for advisory committees, provisions necessary to enable extended producers responsibility program, the ability to declare waste disposal ban for specific material, expand authority to delegate administrative functions, and enter into agreement. Clarify environmental fund contribution and distribution requirements, and update enforcement and inspection provision. I look forward to the clause-by-clause review of Bill 78, and I'm prepared to answer any questions committee may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I just want to note that MLA Jane Whalen Armstrong has also joined us virtually now. Does anyone on the committee have any general comments or questions before we begin the clause-by-clause? Yeah, Member O'Reilly, go ahead.
Sorry, thanks, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair. Yeah, just full disclosure, I did sit on and chair the Waste Reduction and Recovery Act Advisory Committee before I was an MLA for many years, and I have reviewed the bill. I think it's an improvement and will give some extra tools that will assist with waste reduction and waste recovery, as the Minister said. But I also want to speak just briefly to the motions that are going to come forward. And the kind of lens that I bring to bills are ones of around making sure that there's greater accountability, public reporting, making sure that information is made public, and that advisory committees, when they are established, are there to provide advice and so on. So that's the kind of lens that I certainly brought to the bill. I think there will be some amendments that will be brought forward that I think will help improve that, as the minister says. But I want to thank the staff for the work that they do on this. I know counting bottles is not always a lot of fun, but it is really important work in terms of keeping bad stuff out of municipal landfills, and I know we're going to get better at that over time as well. So this is very important work, and I want to thank everybody for what they do. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. I too want to echo that. This strikes me as a bill where everything has worked the way it should, and we've gone back and forth and had the amendments that will make things more transparent, as my colleague said, but also having done a lot of work in contaminated sites, it's good to see things moving forward when it comes to our landfills. I know that they've been in quite a state for a really long time, and I know the department has worked really hard on cleaning them up, so I too appreciate that work. So if no one else has any other questions or comments from online, does the committee agree to conduct a clause-by-clause review of Bill 78, the Waste Reduction and Resource Recovery Act? Okay. We will defer thank you. We will defer the title of the bill until the end and begin with consideration of the clauses. There are 74 clauses in the bill, and we will group the clauses where possible. So please turn to page 1 of the bill. Clauses 1 through 3, committee agreed. Clause 4.
Agreed.
MLA O'Reilly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 78 be amended by adding the following after subclause 4, brackets 2, 2.1, where an agreement is entered into under subsection 1, the minister shall make the following information available to the public by publishing it on a website maintained by the department responsible for the administration of this act. A, the name of the person or entity with whom the agreement has been entered into. B, the powers and duties or functions that have been delegated to that person or entity under the agreement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The motion is in order. To the motion? Go ahead, Member O'Reilly.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think it's important that whenever we do introduce motions at committee, that someone speaks to why we're doing this, and that's what I intend to do. So the bill, this is a repeal and replace. So the old act will be repealed, and this is a total replacement. And given some of the fundamental changes that the minister spoke about, there's some big improvements here. And one of them is to increase the authority and ability of the minister to make agreements. Those agreements can be with a number of entities, including persons, and in 4.1 it says persons or entities authority and responsibility for administering all parts of the act. So this would give the minister the ability to delegate authority. So we felt it was important that those sort of delegations be made available to the public so that there would be a good understanding. We understand that there might be some concerns and issues around some proprietary information in those delegations. So when it comes to corporations, individuals, we've allowed for a summary of that information to be published, and that's what this amendment will do. And I'll speak to the other amendment, which would actually make full agreements public, but that'll be the next item of business. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Sorry, I forgot to delete the mute. Yes, I concur.
Thank you, Minister. Clause 4 as amended. Does committee agree? MLA O'Reilly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. We do have another amendment that Bill 78 be amended by adding the following after subclause 4, brackets 5, 5.1, where an agreement is entered into under subsection 4 or 5, the minister shall make the agreement available to the public by publishing it on a website maintained by the department responsible for the administration of this act. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. The motion is in order. To the motion, Mr. O'Reilly?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So this one differs a little bit from the last motion in that where the minister enters into an agreement with another order of government, that those agreements should be made public. And this will be done through publishing on a website maintained by the department, so that information can be shared publicly. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. Sorry, the motion isn't. Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Clause 4 as amended. Does committee agree? Clause, do I have to say the motion? Sorry. Next, Clause 5, MLA O'Reilly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 78 be amended by deleting Clause 5 and the heading immediately preceding that clause and substituting the following. Advisory committees, 5, brackets 1. The minister shall establish one or more advisory committees to provide advice and assistance relating to the establishment and operation of programs, systems, or activities in respect of waste reduction or resource recovery. Brackets 2, the minister shall A, appoint members to an advisory committee established under subsection 1, and B, designate a chairperson for the advisory committee from among its members. Brackets 3, the minister may specify the functions that an advisory committee is to perform and the manner in which the functions are to be performed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. The motion is in order. To the motion. Go ahead, Mr. O'Reilly.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. So the bill says that the minister may establish an advisory committee. And committee felt that we wanted a little more assurance that this would actually happen. And certainly it has been the practice of the department to do, the minister to do this. As I said earlier, I sat on the committee for a number of years, and I think it does provide valuable advice. So we wanted to move from may to shall. The minister, though, also wanted to have the ability to establish perhaps other committees, so that's why it's now plural. Maybe the minister might need special advice on a very technical topic or some other area, and this will now provide the ability for the minister to do that. So moving from may to shall was, I think, a big improvement, and then the public can go away feeling confident that this will actually happen and that the advice will be offered to the department on how to improve waste reduction, waste recovery. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. To the motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Clause 5 is amended. Does committee agree? Clauses 6 through 10, does committee agree? Clauses 11 through 15, does committee agree? Clause 16, MLA O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 78 be amended by deleting subclause 16, brackets 3, and substituting the following. Public notice of disposal bans or prohibited material, 16.1. If the Commissioner and Executive Council makes regulations under subsections 15.1 or 16, brackets 1, the Minister shall cause a notice of the regulations to be given, A, by means of publication on a website commonly accessed in the Northwest Territories or in a newspaper broadly circulated in the Northwest Territories, B, by radio or television broadcasts, or C, by a combination of these media. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. The motion is in order. To the motion. Mr. O'Reilly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So in the original bill that we were provided, there's a couple of clauses regarding what stuff can generally go into dumps. If I use colloquial language, so there's 15 deals with disposal bans and 16 deals with prohibited material. But the interesting thing was that the way that the bill had been drafted, public notice and publication in a newspaper was only going to be required for prohibited material rather than disposal bans. So committee looked at this and thought that it would be more consistent to ensure that there was some kind of public notification about these significant changes for both disposal bans and prohibited material, and that's what this amendment will now do. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Clause 16 is amended. Does committee agree? Clause 17, MLA O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 78 be amended by adding the following after clause 17, 17.1, brackets 1. In this section, fiscal year means the period beginning on April 1 in 1 year and extending on March 31st in the next year. Excelsis. Public accounts means the public accounts as defined in subsection 1, bracket 1 of the Financial Administration Act, Compte Public, brackets 2, the minister shall, on or before December 31st, following the end of each fiscal year, make it available to the public the audited financial statements of the Environment Fund that are to form part of the public accounts for that year by publishing the financial statements on a website maintained by the department responsible for the administration of this act. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. The motion is in order. To the motion, Mr. O'Reilly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, yeah, I have just a brief or some explanation of what we're trying to do here. And then secondly, I think I'm going to have a question or two for the department. So what this clause does is add a form of annual reporting to the bill. There is an environment fund that is established under the bill, and this is where if you pay a deposit on a beverage container, it goes into part of it does go into this fund, which is then used to run the operations to essentially recycle some of these containers. And it has, of course, the potential to do other deposit refund work for other things, perhaps in the future, like tires or other things where there is no extended producer responsibility. But the money from that fund can also be used for a number of other purposes, and those are set out in the bill, including educational, public education, other work, research related to waste reduction, waste recovery. So anyways, committee felt that it was important that there be some greater accountability around the fund. There is usually some notes in the public accounts around this, but public accounts are not necessarily accessed by the average taxpayer or a resident here. So we felt that it would be important to establish some kind of public reporting that might be more easily accessible and found than the public accounts. So, Madam Chair, that's my bit of an introduction as to what this will do. But I note that in the past there was some annual reporting on beverage containers, and I'm not sure if that's been continued or not. Maybe I could get some clarification from the department about whether that beverage container reporting continues, where it's found, and how it might relate to this change that the committee wants to propose. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. Mr. Minister?
Yeah, I turn to the Assistant Deputy Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Your mic.
I think
No, you have to press.
Oh, it's changed. Okay, my apologies. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do publish currently an annual report, and it includes an audited financial statement for the Environment Fund, as it's already a requirement under the the Financial Administration Act. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Canagan. Mr. O'Reilly?
Yeah, okay, no, that's good. I think that might be done pursuant to the regulations for beverage containers, which is good, but personally, I prefer that annual reporting is actually found in legislation, because then it can't be changed unless you go back to the House or the elected representatives. It's not kind of at the whim of a minister or cabinet. Although I'm okay with what we've got here as an amendment. If it was me, I'd probably make it a little bit stronger, have some description added as well, but I think this is what we've agreed to, so I will support this, and I would encourage the department to continue to do the kind of reporting it does on beverage containers and the audited financial statements. Thanks, the Environment Fund. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Clause 17 as amended. Does committee agree? Clauses 18 through 20. Does committee agree? Clauses 21 through 25. Does committee agree? Clauses 26 through 30. Does committee agree? Clauses 31 through 35. Does committee agree? Clauses 36 through 40. Does committee agree? Clauses 41 through 45. Does committee agree? Clauses 46 through 50. Does committee agree? Clauses 51 through 55. Does committee agree? Clauses 56 through 60. Does committee agree? Clauses 61 through 65. Does committee agree? Clauses 66 through 70. Does committee agree? Clauses 71 through 74. Does committee agree? Does the committee agree that Bill 78, Waste Reduction and Resource Recovery Act as amended, is now ready for consideration in Committee of the Whole? MLA O'Reilly.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 78, Waste Reduction and Resource Recovery Act, be reported to the Assembly as amended. Sorry, let me start again. I move that Bill 78, Waste Reduction and Resource Recovery Act as amended, be reported to the Assembly as ready for consideration in Committee of the Whole. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. Motion is in order. To the motion? Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. Bill 78, Waste Reduction and Resource Recovery Act as amended, will be reported to the Assembly as ready for consideration in Committee of the Whole. Thank you to Minister Thompson and staff. This concludes the public portion of our meeting. We will now take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you